It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. Today, we've got Luis Merchan. He is the director and CEO of Flora Growth. You can find him on Nasdaq at FLGC. Luis, thanks for being back on the Talking Hedge.
Josh, it's a pleasure to be back.
Good to see you. So what do you got? What do you got new? I mean, there's a lot going on. I see that you've got you're hiring a bunch of people. You've got some M&As. There's a lot of talk about. Normally, I kind of ask you like what you're doing, but I've had you on the podcast a couple of times. So what's new?
Well, clearly the biggest news that we have for you today and your audience, Josh, is the acquisition of JustCBD, a massive CBD player in the North American space and a big player for the global cannabis space into the near future.
So JustCBD, there's a lot of companies out there in CBD. Why them? When you went through that whole process and you saw a whole bunch of companies, what was it that resonated with you from either branding or management, as well as down to the financials? There's so many different facets of how to choose one of so many companies. How did you go about that process?
You're absolutely right, Josh. I mean, from early stages when we developed the mergers and acquisition strategy of our company, we highlighted the three strategic pillars for every acquisition, which included incredible talent, meaningful execution in terms of revenue generation and fundamentals in the financial, and then distribution. Mm-hmm. And those three tenets were evaluated in a very detailed way over the last 90 days as we completed due diligence for the company. And the company just checked all the boxes. Obviously, when the highlights include $28 million of audited revenue in 2020, $7 million in EBITDA, a founder and CEO that has been highlighted as one of the emerging leaders in the industry by Forbes 30 under 30 leaders, and just an incredible entrepreneur. So when you check the boxes and when you look under the hood, the company felt like a clear leader in the industry and separated itself from other CBD competitors.
Mm-hmm. Distribution, I find underutilized. There's athletes that are starting, rapper, you name it, everyone's kind of starting a CBD company. And yet, even when they do get into some stores, they can get into a couple different, dozen different stores and locations, and then they stall out. And it's maybe from partially a lack of revenue, but I think it's the lack of the distribution channel. Can you kind of explain from your own experiences, but even before cannabis, you understand how important it is for a solid distribution channel. How much more important is it in an industry like CBD?
It's critical, Josh. Not only distribution, and I think this goes back to why we acquired JustCBD. In order for you to be successful in expanding distribution at scale and have that exponential growth that we're looking in the industry, you have to make sure that you prove that you have a robust supply chain, that you can not only manufacture a complete product, but distribute based on inventory sell-throughs over a short period of time. And JustCBD demonstrated to be able to do just that. They have already 14,000 distribution points across the United States. That was very important to us. Are they able to maintain, do they have the intelligence to maintain the supply chain, to have the data to replenish the products and the SKUs that are actually selling? And that was a key point that we found was exceptionally robust inside the company. But for emerging companies, not only being in a broad distribution network, but having the potential to scale the distribution network so you can continue to deliver accelerated growth year over year. And even though JustCBD is already in 14,000 distribution points, there's still a lot of room for growth, both nationally and internationally from a company perspective. And that's why we're so excited about the brand.
Mm-hmm. So what about, you mentioned having the right SKU. If you're in a spot like Washington State, you're looking for a cannabis brand, there's 2,000 SKUs and it's incredibly daunting task. But then there's a point where you look at some products that just don't sell, chocolate covered espresso beans or some of these niche products. Will we be seeing CBD mattresses in Macy's in the future? Or is that too niche?
No, it's certainly an expectation that we're going to continue to look at all uses of cannabis across the multiple industries in which cannabis will disrupt. But it goes down to SKU count is not as important as the quality of each one of the SKUs. And we have seen that JustCBD does this exceptionally well. They currently are in between 240 and 300 SKUs, individual of them, but do a very good job at evaluating the performance of each one of them. There's a very robust database, a very robust loyalty and repurchase rate on these products, and they understand which metrics they need to incorporate to either accelerate distribution of our product or very quickly discontinue it so it doesn't hit the bottom line of the company. But in terms of product innovation, Josh, yes, there's certainly the possibility for the expansion into other categories of business. And going back to the JustCBD acquisition, not only like obviously food and beverage, which is a category that we're betting on, we know is growing dramatically. We're seeing that accelerated growth that we're looking for over the next 3 to 5 years. We expect that to continue. There's other categories, including pet wellness and topicals, that continue to be very interesting that we'll invest resources into.
Mm-hmm. You're also investing in your own human resources. Your team is building and kind of expanding. Is that right?
It's correct, Josh. I mean, it's the foundation of our company. From day one, we set out to attract the best and most diverse and most skilled talent in the industry. We are attracting talent from multiple disciplinary functions and industries, and we have made significant announcements into our officer as well as our director and management composition, and even in our board. So some of the announcements include Tim Leslie, who was a former CEO of Leafly, as well as a very well-renowned Amazon executive. We also named James Cho, founder of Vessel, our Chief Strategy Officer, Jesse Kastner, our new Chief Marketing Officer, and we're going to continue to strengthen the ranks of our organization as we see the needs for them. And these decisions have been made as we have scaled our operations. Our revenues continue to increase. Our expansion into the global landscape will continue to accelerate. And as those things happen, we're going to continue to add talented individuals to our ranks.
Yeah, so you're growing your folks there, but you're also growing your kind of portfolio. So these mergers and acquisitions that you've been involved with are obviously adding to your top line. You mentioned that JustCBD had 28 million in revenue. Is that right?
That's correct. That was for 2020.
Okay. And so what is your goal, I guess, or what can you talk about moving forward? What areas are you looking at, and how much have these acquisitions helped with your top line?
Well, tremendously, Josh. We clearly had a path to profitability and organic growth in our company over the next 2 to 3 years. And that has always been our mission. We want to make sure we are a global leader in the cannabis space, but also a profitable one. Very few companies in the cannabis space are doing that. And that has always been our focus, building a global cannabis leader. But acquisitions, like obviously, you know, Josh, the cannabis industry is going through a period of consolidation. A lot of companies are looking for companies that are well positioned, like Flora Growth, to partner with and help them accelerate their growth, their distribution and their reach, just like JustCBD. And we're looking at those companies very intently, because if they help us accelerate the vision that we have for the company and save us time in terms of distribution, organic growth, revenue generation, and even shorten our path to profitability, we're definitely going to take a detailed look at them. But clearly, our company is continues to be anchored on 3 foundational growth pillars. The first one is wholesale cannabis, which includes dry flower and derivatives are out of Colombia. We grow cannabis at one of the lowest production costs in the world, and the cannabis space represents about 50% of all revenues in coming out of dry flower. So we're going to continue to work in that space, and we have great news coming out of our farm in Colombia, great results, great genetics, and we look forward to start distributing our dry flower this year. Our second one is our CPG portfolio, which continues to strengthen and deliver meaningful revenues over the short and midterm. And then our third one is our pharmaceutical arm, which is focused on cannabis research. It's focused on creating great formulations, but also informing consumers with scientific-based research that gives the confidence to consumers and patients that they're ingesting or they're using the best quality products for their wellness.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of folks that are looking at value in the industry right now. That the way that the market is, it hasn't been that great for cannabis stocks, hasn't been that great for anybody in the last few months. I'm wondering if that was an opportunity or a challenge for you with like the Great Resignation, for example, in your ability to acquire this talent. Was that challenging to find, or did it just kind of create a funnel that led to you? Can you kind of explain if it was a challenge or benefit?
It's both ways, Josh. I think in terms of capital markets, clearly it presents both a challenge and a benefit. A challenge in that we have seen a deterioration of our capitalization. It's happened to every company. It's happened to the cannabis index, especially the cannabis industry has been affected by the regulatory framework, which especially in the United States, that we expected some of the bills to pass and they didn't pass. And then they were passed, but they didn't pass again. Mm-hmm. And so that impacted the ability to execute for some of these players in the industry, and also created some level of uncertainty. But on the other hand, great companies that have great fundamentals also saw their market capitalizations come down, and that gave opportunities for companies that had a great cash positioning, that are well positioned to attract them and then acquire them. And that's precisely what happened with us and JustCBD. We were able to get the company with great people, great revenues, great distribution, positive EBITDA at a very, very favorable valuation for our shareholders. So that's a meaningful one. And then in terms of talent acquisition, it's been very helpful in that talent from other industries, what we would consider traditional industries that have a stigma against cannabis, are more open to exploring cannabis as an opportunity to continue to further their careers. And we have seen great interest from all industries. We clearly are seeing a great shift from the Great Resignation into non-traditional, more future hyper growth companies, just as Flora Growth is. And I think that's going to continue to be the trend over the near future.
Mm-hmm. Right now, too, there's going to be even more consolidation. Companies that either want an exit strategy because it's trying times, or they're stupid money and they can't not take the offer, or they just have to fold for whatever reason and capitulate. When that happens, as what seemingly is the longest bull market in history kind of comes to an end, how well are you positioned for that M&A strategy and consolidation? And are you looking at value? Are you looking at distressed assets, East Coast, West Coast?
Yeah, all of the above, Josh. I think it's important that we go back to the M&A strategy of our company. We will evaluate the occasional distressed asset if it makes sense for a company's strategy, which includes, of course, wholesale, CPG, and pharmaceutical research. If it falls into those buckets and it can be accretive to our infrastructure, we will look at distressed assets. We're not interested in acquiring distressed companies. I think the companies that we want to work with are companies that are thriving, are companies that have very clean balance sheets, that have not acquired debt. There's something that was incredibly impressive about JustCBD. It's a company that grew from no revenues, literally no revenues, to $30 million without raising any debt. No debt in the balance sheet. It's a very, very clean company. And that is something that we're looking for. We're looking for people that know how to execute, that are responsible financially, that can support the companies and the company's growth mission, and that are accretive from all those three lessons. But But without a doubt, Josh, there's companies out there that are executed, but their market caps have been shrunk to a place where they can no longer continue to operate on their own. We're going to take a look at those, and if they are accretive and they make sense for Flora's infrastructure, then we're certainly going to make the move.
Well, there's plenty of them out there. I think this is almost a record where around 50% of all stocks trading on, I believe it was the S&P, are down 50%. I don't think FLGC escaped that either. I think in the last 52 weeks, you guys are down 50 or 57%, something like that. Unfortunately, moving in momentum with legalization instead of being decoupled with your own fundamentals. I feel like fundamentals have been dead by comparison to technical traders for a long time. And if folks looked at the fundamental opportunities separate from the federal legalization, they would see an opportunity in FLGC. When, in your opinion, do you feel that there will be finally the decoupling away from, cannabis stocks as a whole and regulation or federal legalization? When will they start trading individually on their own as they deserve to be?
Yeah, I think, Josh, it's a great point that you're making. And I think it's important to it's a certainty that it will happen. It's going to happen because there's companies that have very solid fundamentals, such as mine, that will execute, and we just don't know when it's going to happen. My belief will be over the next 6 to 18 months, depending on a number of variables. Clearly, there's a lot of geopolitical situations that are affecting capital markets today. But with that in mind, our focus at Flora is to ensure that we have a path to profitability, regardless of the instability and the uncertainty of the markets, because eventually investors are smart enough to look at companies that can execute on those fundamentals, are companies that have exponential revenue growth, that are expanding their infrastructure, that are managing their capital, that have a clean balance sheet and have a path to profitability. Those companies are going to end up being rewarded. And then the path to the regulatory framework being cleared up in the US is also a matter of time. So there will be key accelerators of growth in the cannabis industry, and I expect that our investors are going to be rewarded for holding on to our stock.
Did I see that you just expanded into Mexico?
Yeah, Josh, we did. We launched in a number of incredible establishments. It's just our first entry into the Mexican market at Walmart.com, as well as Topel, which is a big distribution store chain in Mexico. We're going to continue to expand all of our categories as we strengthen our distribution relationships with Mexico. But we firmly believe that outside of the United States, Mexico is our strongest distribution partner over the short term in the Americas.
Yes, and you're getting flower, which is at least 42% in the lowest market being California. And so if that trend holds, at least you'll have 40%, with some of the best terroir and the lowest labor out of Colombia, and then an opportunity in Mexico to then get through the US when other people can't. It's not NAFTA. I forget what the new term is, but that seems like a phenomenal vertical integrated opportunity to, operate where you're at, grow in Colombia, distribute through Mexico, and when convenient, get into the US and basically have cost of goods sold at like 15 cents, maybe even including landing costs. And there's no one that's going to be able to compete with that.
Yeah, exactly, Josh. So when you look at the breakdown by category, 40 to 50% being in the dry flower category, and about 15 to 20% being in edibles, and then about 10 to 15% being in vapes and accessories. The product categories that we have assembled at our company take care of the largest size of the cannabis pie. And that's the reason why we have done so. And then the trade routes that we are establishing are meant to do just that, to facilitate the growth on each one of those categories. And it's just a matter of time, right? Resolution 227 in Colombia was finally signed a week ago Sunday, and that resolution allows us to now signal a portion of our export into dry flower. Effectively, Flora is becoming a dry flower exporter out of Colombia over the next several months. So that's going to be very meaningful. We're also going to be able to manufacture, distribute, and export food and beverage out of Colombia. And then we're also going to be able to manufacture and distribute dietary supplements, which are a category that are incredibly exciting. It has a tremendous level of loyalty, and we're going to be able to do that in Colombia, several other countries in the world.
Dietary supplements, is that going to require FDA approval, since it's fairly difficult and some CBD companies have already been issued the equivalent of cease and desist because of the claims that they were making?
Yeah, that is correct. And that's why you have to pair this up with scientific-based research. So at the same time as we have filed a patent for our formulations that are going to be dietary supplements in Colombia, and we have filed for the INVIMA registration. We're working with INVIMA closely to ensure that they approve the dietary supplements. You also have to pair it with scientific-based research. You have to ensure that you do the work, that you do the science, and that you prove that the claims that you're gonna put in these products in terms of wellness and support of the immune system for patients actually hold true and actually are safe and actually remain with high levels of quality. So we're doing the work, but we expect to be able to launch products in 2022.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the bills that were approved and not approved, kind of affecting stock prices. That's kind of the Safe Banking Act. In your opinion, what is going to be the next biggest mover or driver, not only for the industry, but also affecting your business and your stock price as well? Is it going to be banking? I assume you already have banking access, and that's not really an issue since a lot of companies do. Or is it going to be federal legalization? Especially with 280E being able to write off a lot of labor is going to, probably make that stock price look incredibly attractive, having better profit margins. What are you more excited about, banking legalization or federal legalization in the U.S.?
Oh, without a doubt, Josh, and I couldn't wait to let you know. Without a doubt, federal legalization will be the most meaningful regulatory law change in the entire industry globally. In the United States, that will happen. There's going to be a massive response from the market because it will be very significant. But all of these other pieces of legislation are important and will make an impact. And even though I have access to banking instruments, we are considered a very high-risk industry. Like the Safe Banking Act will help improve our negotiating terms with our banking partners, will help improve our transactional and our access to capital and all of these rates that accumulate to lower margins. So it will help over the short term to have the Safe Banking Act passed. And even though we have access to banking, it's not to all bankers. So all those things will improve in terms of access. The MORE Act will also be a significant passage. We expect something of the sort to pass over the next 12 months. That will be meaningful as well. But of course, without a doubt, the most meaningful change that could come is federal legalization. Mm-hmm.
Are you looking at Asia or Europe at all? Or are you just primarily focused on the Americas?
Yeah, no, we certainly are, Josh. Actually, JustCBD has a very robust and growing business in the United Kingdom. We're going to inject all of Flora Growth's portfolio into the United Kingdom, and we'll move very quickly to accelerate growth in that part of Europe. And we're also looking at other areas in the APAC region that are very, very interesting. Of course, we have closed a number of distribution agreements that are waiting to activate with South Africa, with Israel, with Australia, all of them with great distribution partners that cannot wait to take our product. We're just waiting on a couple of regulatory steps that we need to clear with the Colombian government, and then we're off to the races.
Mm-hmm. What other kind of regulatory hurdles do you have to go through for that third facet of your focus being research and development? Kind of reminded me a little bit of media in a sense, where you're trying to educate so that you can sell. And media has been on a pretty hot streak. Fourth quarter, like December, I think there was 5 or 6 M&As specifically on media kind of consolidation. Where do you see that research and development play within, your revenue stream?
Oh, it's exceptionally meaningful. Obviously, kicks in over the long term because you have to do the science. You cannot take shortcuts. There's some adjustments to what you can do in terms of clinical trials, depending on whether you're going to treat a condition that is considered chronic or a condition that is considered seasonal. But when you do the research, like the one we're doing with the University of Manchester, that is being cleared by the NHS right now. When you're doing research for something like fibromyalgia, for chronic pain, and the results of that research support what empirically we know is helpful, that some of the molecules and formulations of cannabis support the treatment of these chronic pain ailments, then you're able to broadly distribute these products and put the claims on these products, which would give a lot of confidence to the medical community, including the doctors, to formulate, and to the patients for taking it. So we expect the revenues to be meaningful, not only in pain, but also in other illnesses that are meaningful, like anxiety and insomnia. So we're going to continue to do that research, even though it's going to take 12, 18 months for us to be able to have formulations that are broadly distributed in the market. But I think those types of formulations present also an additional benefit to the other categories of products, in that if the company is investing in scientific-based research and is putting significant dollars into this category, it shows that it's willing to highlight the benefits of that cannabis has in its multiple categories across the over 100 molecules that are available.
We're seeing some research being implemented by the NFL, and the National Football League is doing some research on cannabis, which is pretty surprising. They've been dragging their feet more than a lot of the other leagues. I think the Major League Baseball team hasn't drug tested, the National Hockey League hasn't drug tested, raising some concerns about these white-dominated sports, whereas the football, even the NBA doesn't even test as much anymore for cannabis. So finally, NFL kind of getting on board and looking at alternatives, especially for CTE and some of these other issues. And I'm wondering when that does flip and they're allowed to speak their mind and use the product and be spokespeople, is that going to influence the market at all? Do you use influencers?
We do. We have a number of influencers, even like with JustCBD. The company just signed a great influencement agreement with a great athlete and commentator in soccer, but in the European Union. Obviously, soccer is the largest sport in the world. We're getting to the Qatar World Cup this year, so that was a meaningful that is yet to be announced. But we're going to continue to work with these athletes and celebrities because they become great spokesperson for what is a wellness movement. There's without a doubt, Josh. You know, this cannabis is a generational opportunity to not only in terms of economic benefit, but also in terms of wellness and well-being and a change of lifestyle for a lot of people that have been dealing with like chronic pain, that have been dealing with insomnia, that have been dealing with anxiety, and all the access that they have today are actually very addictive solutions to what the problem is. Like the opioid crisis continues to be a crisis, continues to be an epidemic. There's over 100,000, almost 100,000 people that die every year from drug overdose. That has spiked over the last couple of years with the pandemic. People are overutilizing things like hydrocodone and oxycodone, and there's clearly safer alternatives out there. And cannabis presents itself as one of those plant-based wellness alternative that can help alleviate some of these ailments that are plaguing humanity at a much lower addictive rate with much less consequences as those of opioids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And you're able to, are you working with anybody in Colombia at the hospital level to educate clients that come in? I know that South America has different kind of rules in terms of doctors being able to talk and prescribe cannabis. Is that something that you're able to do down there?
Yes, we are, Josh. You're absolutely right. We have a number of partnerships. But me personally, have very close ties with the Colombian government and regulators, helping them inform them on what would be the most appropriate regulatory framework in which patients and consumers can have access to cannabis of high quality without any bad actors or without any bad quality products filtering into the market. And a company like mine, a leader in the Colombian space, obviously is helping inform how to navigate this. And then you probably saw at the beginning of the year that insurance companies are now covering cannabinoid-based formulations for patients. So that is a big step because it helps doctors have the confidence to prescribe these medications and know that their patients are actually going to be able to afford them. But the next step is education the medical community on the benefits of cannabis. And we're actually putting our money where our mouth is, and we're making sure that we're developing educational courses, and we're spending a significant amount of resources training the medical community so they understand how to formulate and what types of formulations to give their patients to treat the various illnesses. And we also have partnerships with many medical and educational institutions like the Industrial University of Santander, who has one of the most renowned scientists in the world, Dr. Elena Stechenko, an expert in chromatography, to help us support us in the mission of providing a safe access to cannabis to all.
That's great. What else is on the horizon? What are a couple of goals that you've got in order to get there?
Well, Josh, we're going to continue to expand our distribution. Now the work on bringing JustCBD into the fold. We've done this multiple times already, so we know how to very quickly merge companies from a cultural and distribution revenue standpoint. We're going to do that over the next couple of months. Obviously, at the end of next month, we're going to have our earnings call for 2021, and we're going to talk about our guidance for 2022 with the many changes that are coming. We expect to continue to expand our distribution and execute on our 3 pillars. This is the year where we're going to be able to start reaping the benefits of all the work that we have done in terms of building our infrastructure, building our talent, building our distribution network. We're now going to be able to activate all of our product categories, and I look forward to highlight all the meaningful successes we're going to have in 2022, Josh.
Yeah, so if investors want to take a look at Flora Growth and see where you guys are at, looks like a value stock to me, FLGC on Nasdaq, but where else are you guys at?
Of course, Josh, we are very active on social media. My name, of course, Luis Merchan. I'm the director and CEO. Very active on LinkedIn, highlighting all the many changes and the many announcements in terms of execution for our company. We are online on www.floragrowth.com. Our entire website and contacts for public relations and investor relations are there, but you can also follow us on Twitter and the various social media platforms.
And I'll put Luis's LinkedIn connection in the show notes in the description, as well as Flora Growth's LinkedIn profile as well. But with that, I think we're gonna have to roll this one up. So I want to thank my guest, Luis Merchan. He's the director and CEO of Flora Growth. Luis, thanks again for being back on the Talking Hedge.
Josh, it's always a pleasure.
Appreciate it. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.